wrapped up a 14-hour shift on the rig. My name is Henry Harrington. I'm 52 years old, and I've spent the past 27 years working on oil platforms around the world. My hands were still slick with grease when I opened a message from Gianna, my wife of 18 years. I stared at the screen as another text arrived, this one showing a screenshot of our joint account. 2 cents remained where $142,000 used to be. She had even added a kiss emoji as if it were somehow cute. I didn't throw the phone or punch a wall. I just sat on my bunk in the cramped quarters I shared with 2 other riggers and typed back, "So, good luck." Then I turned the phone off and went to take a shower. The next morning, the guys could tell something was wrong when I skipped breakfast and went straight to wake. Jackson, my second in command, kept glancing my way during safety checks but knew better than to ask. 16 men depended on us to keep this floating metal city safe and operational. Personal problems stayed personal. During lunch, I checked my email. Gianna had already filed for divorce, claiming I'd abandoned the marriage by working overseas for too long. She had hired a lawyer named Bradley, a specialist in high-asset divorces, and they were demanding spousal support based on my excessive income. She even had the nerve to mention that her new emotional support partner was now living in our home in Odessa. I closed the laptop and went back to work. I didn't say a word to anyone. That night, I wrote a single email, not to Gianna, but to my cousin Brendan, an accountant in Houston. "Time to activate Protocol Winter," I typed. It was our old code phrase. No explanation needed. 3 minutes later, his reply came, already on it. "Don't respond to anything until you're stateside." I had 2 more weeks left on this rotation. 2 more weeks of 12-hour shifts under 110-degree heat, while the life I thought I had back home fell apart. The crew would have understood if I'd asked for emergency leave, but what good would that have done? Better to finish the job and collect the paycheck. That night, before turning in, the rig's supervisor, Vincent, stopped by my quarters. "Everything stable?" he asked. He wasn't just talking about the operation. "Everything's under control," I said. And it was more than Gianna would ever know. I met Gianna 19 years ago at my buddy's fishing supply store in Odessa. She was 31 then, working the register, full of jokes about city folks who thought catching bass was complicated. I was 33, already a decade into oil work, home between contracts and helping my friends stock inventory. We married 11 months later. Fast, but it felt right. By then, I'd built a solid life. I owned my house outright thanks to a lucky investment in a small producer that got bored out, and I had a steady career on international rigs. She said she admired my stability and focus. I admired her energy, the way she could talk to anyone. The rotation schedule was always a challenge, 2 months on, 1 month off back then. But the pay was incredible. In 6 months, I earned what most people in our town made in 3 years. We decided it was worth it. She would handle the home front. I would build our future. By year 12, the cracks began to show in small ways. Complaints about missed birthdays. Questions about whether I really needed that Saudi contract. Remarks about how her friends' husbands were always home for dinner parties. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. When I turned 47, she stopped asking when I'd be home and stopped sending pictures. Our video calls grew shorter. I chalked it up to the natural evolution of a long-distance marriage, comfort replacing excitement, routine overtaking uncertainty. Last Christmas, I came home to find she had redecorated the entire house without a word. New furniture, new paint, new everything. When I asked about it, she simply said, "You needed a change." I didn't ask what kind of change she meant. 2 months ago, I noticed transfers from our joint account to one I didn't recognize. "House repairs," she said. The foundation needed work. Before heading out on this rotation, I drove by the house. There was no construction in sight, but a black Audi I'd never seen before was parked in the driveway. 4 weeks ago, she stopped answering my calls altogether. Just texts about being busy with a new project. I almost flew home early then. Instead, I told myself to trust my wife of 18 years. 3 days ago, our neighbor Harold sent me a picture of a moving truck in front of the house. Thought you should know was all he wrote. I didn't reply. I just waited. Sometimes the best thing a man can do is nothing at all. Sometimes the truth reveals itself. I finished my shift the day after Gianna's message and headed back to my quarters. The satellite phone rang. It was Brendan. "You sitting down?" he asked. "Just tell me."
He didn't soften the blow. She had been planning this for at least 14 months. There were regular transfers to a separate account under her maiden name. It started small, $2,000 here, 3 there, then escalated into much larger amounts over the last 90 days. A total of $214,000 had been moved, not just the $142 from our joint account. The room felt like it tilted sideways. That was far more than I ever thought we had. "There's more," Brendan continued. "She changed your life insurance beneficiary 6 months ago, and she took out a $40,000 home equity line of credit against the house. She forged your signature on it." I sat on the edge of my bunk, the low hum of the rig's generators vibrating beneath my feet. 18 years together, nearly 2 decades of shared life, and she'd been quietly taking me apart piece by piece for over a year. "The guy you asked about," Brendan said, "Charlie. 25, just like she told you. Former personal trainer, no solid job history for 3 years. 3 previous relationships, all with women 4 to 5 years older. Each one ended within 18 months. I didn't need the pattern explained. And Henry," Brendan's voice lowered, "there are credit card charges for 2 one-way tickets to Palm Springs. Departure next Tuesday, 3 days from now." She hadn't just left me. She was disappearing, trying to vanish completely before I even made it home. I hung up and sat in the dark for a long time. I didn't turn the lights on. I just sat there, watching memories rearrange themselves. Every late-night phone call she took outside. Her sudden interest in fitness 3 years ago. The constant complaints about money despite our savings. What cut the deepest wasn't just the betrayal. It was the precision, the planning, the patient, calculated dismantling of our life. While she smiled at me, while she took my money, while she said she missed me, something inside shifted. The hurt hardened, crystallizing into something colder. I went to my locker, pulled out my laptop, and opened a private email account only Brendan and I knew about. I logged into the holding company we'd set up 8 years earlier, after I'd watched a colleague lose everything in his divorce. Winter Holdings, named after my grandmother's maiden name and the creek behind her farm. When the balance loaded, $1.6 million, I felt my pulse steady. I'd been diverting 70% of my income there for years. All legal, declared on taxes, but isolated from marital assets through the structure Brendan had built. I sent one message to my lawyer in Houston. Subject: proceed with Operation Cold Return. Then I closed the laptop and walked to the mess hall for coffee. For the first time in days, I felt hungry. 38 hours after my rotation ended, I landed in Houston. Brendan met me at the airport and handed me a burner phone along with a folder of documents. "She's been calling your regular number nonstop since yesterday," he said as we walked to his car. "The bank froze the account she transferred the money to. Standard procedure for large, unusual movements. They're asking you to verify in person. She doesn't know I'm back?" I asked. "No one does. Just me and Thomas." "Thomas, my lawyer." "But that's not the most interesting part," Brendan said, pulling out his tablet. "You need to see this." He showed me a thread of messages between Gianna and someone saved as D. I skimmed through them. Plans for their new life. Jokes about me working overseas while they spent my money. Details about a house they'd already put a deposit on in Palm Springs. Then one exchange from 2 days ago stopped me cold. "Gianna, bank froze the money. Need Henry for verifying in person. What do we do?" "D. He's still on the rig for 10 more days. Tell him there's an emergency with your mom. Get him to authorize you. You're still his wife." "Gianna, he's not answering my calls." "D. Try harder. We need that money before the house closes next week or we go to Plan B." "Gianna, I'm not comfortable with Plan B." "D. It's just insurance money. He works a dangerous job for a reason. People have accidents all the time." I handed the tablet back. My hands were steady, but cold. "These are admissible?" I asked. "They're from her phone's cloud backup," Brendan said. "She used your Apple ID when she set up her new one last year. Never changed the password." Everything synced to your cloud. We drove straight to Thomas's office. He was already waiting. Divorce papers were drafted. A criminal complaint for the forged home equity loan was ready. Thomas leaned back once we were seated. "There's a complication," he said. "She filed a domestic violence claim against you yesterday. Says she left because of emotional abuse and financial control. She claims she was afraid for her safety." "That's ridiculous," I said. "I've been 6,000 miles away for the past 7 weeks." "Doesn't matter," Thomas replied. "It's a tactic, a way to influence the judge and justify taking the money. Her lawyer is already pushing for an emergency hearing tomorrow to get a restraining order against you and exclusive use of the house. Basically, she wants you banned from your own property while her boyfriend lives there." I exhaled slowly. "Unbelievable." Thomas nodded grimly. "And there's more. That home equity loan is already gone." He paused. "She transferred it to an LLC registered under Charlie just 3 days after receiving the funds." I took a deep breath. "Options," I said. "We counterfile immediately. Fraud, forgery, alienation of affection, criminal conspiracy based on those text messages. And we request an emergency freeze on all her accounts and the LLC." Thomas slid a document across the desk. "And this," he said. I glanced down at the paper. "Motion to dismiss domestic violence claim. Evidence of perjury." "What evidence?" I asked. Thomas gave a thin smile. "Your company security badge logs show you've been on that oil platform for 7 straight weeks. Passport entry and exit stamps confirm it. I also subpoenaed your phone records, every call between you two for the past year. Nothing even remotely close to a threat or argument." I signed where he indicated. "One more thing," Thomas added. "You need to look surprised when she's served. She can't know you're back yet. As far as she's concerned, you're still offshore." I nodded. "I can do that." As I left his office, my phone buzzed. A text from Gianna to my regular number. "Please call me. It's an emergency. I need you." I didn't reply. The trap was set. Only this time, not by her. That night, I stayed at Brendan's place and slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I logged into the security camera feed at the house in Odessa, a system ID installed 3 years earlier and maintained remotely. Gianna had either forgotten about it or assumed I couldn't access it from the rig. The footage showed a young man lounging by the pool, our pool, sipping whiskey from my collection and wearing my old college sweatshirt. He was on the phone laughing, feet kicked up on the outdoor furniture I'd built by hand. Moments later, Gianna entered the frame. She looked anxious, pacing as she spoke. There was no audio, but her body language said enough. Things weren't going according to plan. Brendan walked in with coffee. "You need to see this," he said, opening his laptop. He'd spent the night digging deeper into Charlie's background. What he found changed everything. "He's done this before," Brendan said. 3 times. Each case followed the same pattern. He'd meet a woman, usually married and financially secure. The relationship would escalate. She'd leave her husband, take whatever money she could, and move away with Charlie. Within 18 months, he'd vanish, along with whatever remained. The screen showed articles, court documents, social media posts. 3 women over 5 years, each left financially ruined. One was still paying off the debt Charlie had racked up in her name. "There's more," Brendan continued quietly. "He was once a person of interest in the death of his second girlfriend's ex-husband. Suspicious car crashed 6 weeks after their divorce filing. The guy went off a cliff he'd driven for 20 years. No charges were ever filed, but the implication hung heavy in the room." My phone rang again. "Gianna." Same number. I let it go to voicemail. "You should hear this," Brendan said, pressing play. "Miles, please," her voice said. "I need you to call the bank. There's been a misunderstanding with our account. I was just moving money into a safer investment like we talked about, but the bank froze everything. I can't access any funds. Please call them and tell them it's okay. I'm really scared." We had talked about no such thing. The performance was convincing. 2 weeks earlier, I might have believed her. "She's desperate," Thomas said later when we met him for lunch. "The Palm Springs closing is in 5 days. They need that money. What's our next move?" I asked. "The emergency hearing is this afternoon," Thomas said. "Judge Winters is presiding. She has zero tolerance for false domestic violence claims. We have your alibi fully documented, and the bank funds are frozen. We've filed to have them returned to you exclusively." Thomas paused, then added, "But there's something else you should know." He slid a folder across the table. "Your neighbor Harold sent these to my office this morning. Inside were photos of furniture being loaded into a moving truck. My furniture, family heirlooms, pieces that had been in my family for generations. They're clearing out the house, Thomas confirmed. Looks like they're planning to vanish, whether they get the bank money or not. I closed the folder and handed it back. Change of plans. Both men looked at me. I want to go home. That's not advisable before. Thomas began. Not to confront them, I clarified. To watch. From Harold's place. I want to see it with my own eyes. Brendan and Thomas exchanged a look. And I want to be there when they're served. I added, my voice steady, no longer hiding behind paperwork. I want Gianna to see me when her world collapses. Thomas studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. I'll arrange it. As we left the restaurant, my burner phone buzzed with a text from Harold. They're packing your grandfather's desk now. The one you restored. Thought you'd want to know. Some thefts go beyond money. Some betrayals cut deeper than any wound. This had just become personal in an entirely new way. The 6-hour drive to Odessa gave me time to think. Thomas arranged for the sheriff to serve the papers at 9 a.m. the next morning. Brendan set up surveillance from Harold's house across the street, where I'd stay overnight. Everything was in motion. Harold greeted me with a firm, silent handshake when I arrived just after midnight. He was a retired petroleum engineer, 30 years on the rigs himself. No explanations needed. She has no idea you're watching? I asked once we were inside. None, he said. They've been packing all day, loading the good stuff, leaving the rest. He pointed toward the front window, giving a clear view of my driveway. 2 moving trucks had already come and gone. Big ones coming tomorrow morning for the final load. I nodded, taking it all in. Anyone else been by? Some woman with a clipboard yesterday, he said. Looked like a real estate agent. That stopped me cold. They're selling the house. Looks like it. Saw her taking pictures. I immediately called Thomas, who promised to check the property records first thing in the morning. By 3 a.m., unable to sleep, I sat at Harold's kitchen table going through the documentation Brendan had compiled. Bank records showed a crystal steady siphoning of our accounts. Phone logs revealed hours of calls to Charlie stretching back more than a year. Credit card statements showed hotel stays in our own town on weekends she claimed to be visiting her sister. Seeing it all laid out like that brought a cold clarity. This wasn't just infidelity. It was a planned extraction, a slow, deliberate dismantling of everything we'd built. By sunrise, Thomas texted confirmation. Gianna had officially listed our house with a real estate agency 2 days earlier. The asking price was set 30% below market value for a quick sale. She'd forged my signature on the listing agreement. At 8:30 a.m., I watched from Harold's kitchen window as Gianna and Charlie loaded the last items into his black Audi. Small valuables, easy to carry, my grandmother's silver frames, the antique watch my father had given me before he died. At 8:45, a large moving truck arrived. 3 men stepped out and headed toward the house, right on schedule. At 8:55, an unmarked car pulled up behind the truck, blocking it in. 2 sheriff's deputies and a woman in a business suit stepped out. Thomas had sent a court officer along. It's time, I said to Harold, crossing the street. I stayed a few steps back as the deputies approached my front door. Gianna opened it, her expression shifting from irritation to confusion as they identified themselves. Mrs. Harrington, one deputy said, we have paperwork to serve you and the gentleman inside. I stood just out of sight, watching from the edge of the driveway as the color drained from her face. She called for Charlie, who appeared behind her, his arms sliding around her waist. That's when I stepped forward. The look on Gianna's face, I'll never forget it. Shock, then fear, then calculation. Charlie just looked confused. Henry, she whispered. They handed over the stack of documents, an emergency restraining order, an asset freeze, a criminal complaint for forgery, nullification of the home listing, and a notice of divorce citing fraud and conspiracy. You can't do this, Charlie said, puffing out his chest.
We had that domestic violence claim dismissed this morning by Judge Winters. I cut in. Hard to abuse someone from 6,000 miles away. The judge had been especially interested in those text messages about her plan B, the one involving my insurance policy. Charlie's face went slack. Gianna stepped forward, tears forming instantly. Henry, this is all a misunderstanding. I was just saving our documents. I finished the thought for her, gesturing toward the moving truck protecting our assets by emptying the house, planning our future. by selling it behind my back. She had no answer. You have 30 minutes to remove personal items only, the court officer stated firmly. Clothing and toiletries. Everything else remains pending court inventory. As they went inside under supervision, I turned to leave. Where are you going? Gianna called after me. I didn't look back, home. 3 weeks later, the hearing took place. I sat with Thomas at one table. Gianna and her lawyer sat at another. Charlie was nowhere to be seen. He had vanished 2 days after being served, taking Gianna's remaining cash and jewelry with him, just as Brendan had predicted. The judge reviewed the evidence carefully. Bank records, forged documents, text messages, location data. When she reached the messages discussing Plan B and the insurance payout, she stopped reading and looked directly at Gianna. Mrs. Harrington, are you aware of the penalties for conspiracy to commit insurance fraud? Gianna's lawyer leaned in, whispering urgently. It wasn't like that, Your Honor, Gianna stammered. Charlie was just joking. I never would have. Save it for the criminal proceedings, the judge interrupted coldly. This court's jurisdiction is the division of assets and dissolution of marriage. She continued reviewing the documents, occasionally shaking her head. When she finished, she removed her glasses and spoke quietly. In my 30 years on the bench, I've rarely seen such a clear case of premeditated financial deception within a marriage. She looked directly at Gianna. You systematically drained joint accounts, forged signatures, and attempted to flee the state with marital assets. Then her tone softened slightly as she turned to me. Mr. Harrington, while your creation of separate accounts through a holding company may seem questionable to some, the court finds that you consistently paid household expenses, filed proper taxes, and made no effort to hide assets from the government only to protect them from potential future claims. Her ruling was swift and final. All assets Gianna had transferred were to be returned to me. The house remained solely mine. Her claims for spousal support were denied. And most satisfyingly, the judge referred the forgery and conspiracy evidence to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. As we left the courtroom, Gianna tried to approach me. I just kept walking. Some victories need no words. 6 months later, I stood on the porch of my cabin in the mountains outside Missoula, Montana. The property had always belonged to Windlight Holdings, 40 acres of pine forest and meadow I.D. bought 5 years earlier as a retirement plan. Gianna never knew it existed. Her forgery charges were reduced in a plea deal. No jail time, but 5 years of probation and restitution payments she'd likely never complete. Last I heard, she was living with her sister in Tulsa, working retail. Charlie had moved on to a divorced doctor in Arizona. His pattern continued unbroken. I'd taken early retirement from the oil company. 27 years was enough. Between my investments, savings, and natural gas royalties from a property in Arkansas, I had more than enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Harold occasionally kept me updated on Odessa. I'd sold the house there. Too many memories, none of them good. He helped clear out what remained, shipping the family heirlooms to Montana and donating the rest. That afternoon, the mail brought an envelope from Brendan, final paperwork dissolving Winterlight Holdings. Its purpose fulfilled, assets transferred, taxes paid, a chapter closed. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, I poured a glass of bourbon and sat on the porch swing I built that summer. For the first time in years, no one expected anything from me. No crew waiting for orders. No wife pretending to miss me. Just quiet in the wind whispering through the pines. My phone rang. A new project manager from a Canadian oil company offered a consulting position. Good money. Minimal travel. Just sharing decades of experience. I'll think about it, I told him.